for Pacifica. The district, formerly designed as an oasis of luxury, has become a den for violent gangs and drug addicts. Kang Tao recently expressed interest in the purchase of Pacifica property with the aim of constructing a new server and logistics center. The city government has openly considered selling the land for a single euro-dollar in a symbolic gesture, provided that Kang Tao demonstrates commitment to eradicating the district's criminal presence.
In the corporate landscape of Night City, few developments carry as much potential for upheaval as Kang Tao's expressed interest in Pacifica. What began as a simple real estate proposition has evolved into a powder keg that threatens to ignite the most significant territorial conflict the district has seen since the Unification War. At the center of this brewing storm lies Dogtown, the fortified enclave ruled by the rogue militia Barghest, and the fundamental question of whether corporate ambition can overcome entrenched military resistance. Kang Tao's interest in Pacifica emerged in 2077 when the corporation publicly expressed desire to purchase and redevelop the neglected district. The Night City Council's response was telling. They offered to sell Pacifica for a single euro-dollar if Kang Tao could first clean out the gangs and crime plaguing the area. This proposal never reached fruition by the end of 2077, but the mere prospect revealed Kang Tao's strategic thinking beyond simple weapons manufacturing toward real estate and political influence. For Kang Tao, Pacifica represents far more than prime oceanfront property. Establishing a foothold there would literally put the corporation on the shore of Pacific markets, potentially aiding shipping operations and providing a logistical base for West Coast expansion, and it would be a mirror opposite of the Arasaka waterfront that's in Watson. The district's strategic value extends beyond commerce. Pacifica's turmoil included rogue AI activity, with the Voodoo Boys actively meddling beyond the Black Wall. Some observers speculate that Kang Tao's eagerness for Pacifica might hide ulterior motives, such as gaining access to abandoned network infrastructure or AI research left in the district's old Netrunner hubs. However, Pacifica's criminal ecosystem presents a formidable obstacle. The western half falls under Voodoo Boys and animal influence, while the eastern portion, known as Dogtown, remains firmly under the far more intimidating Barghest control. These factions share a common goal, keeping Pacifica free of outside control. For Kang Tao to succeed, they must displace these deeply entrenched criminal organizations that have spent years fortifying their positions. By 2077, Barghest had built Dogtown into a self-contained stronghold with a thriving black market economy. The organization established profitable trafficking operations in weapons, technology, and contraband, making the mini-state surprisingly profitable. The Night City authorities and megacorps largely turned a blind eye to Dogtown's existence, as long as its chaos remained contained. Barghest accomplished the unprecedented feat of carving out an entire district of Night City while keeping police forces completely excluded. Thanks to its Militech origins and years of stockpiling, Barghest wields firepower comparable to a private army. They possess military-grade hardware including modified combat vehicles, bipedal mechs and exosuits, surface-to-air missile systems, at least one Basilisk tank, and armored Chimera heavy combat vehicles. For air support, Barghest operates several AV gunships and maintains an airship that perpetually circles Dogtown as a surveillance platform and a propaganda platform. Barghest operates as a paramilitary force rather than a typical street gang, maintaining a strict hierarchy with formal ranks. The organization includes disenfranchised mercenaries, ex-military drifters, and former gang members. For many desperate youths, joining Barghest offered weapons, steady pay, medical care, and most appealingly, a sense of belonging, without hidden cost or corporate fine print. The fundamental incompatibility between Kang Tao's ambitions and Barghest's existence creates an inevitable conflict scenario. From Barghest's perspective, Kang Tao's proposal represents nothing less than an existential threat. The militia has fought for years to keep Pacifica free of corporate control, and suddenly, a foreign megacorp might arrive with government-sanctioned authority to pacify Dogtown. Barghest's fundamental DNA remains anti-corporate. Any Kang Tao attempt to proceed would almost certainly trigger a violent resistance. The militia possesses several advantages that could prove decisive in the early stages of such a conflict. Tactically, Barghest would leverage just about everything at their disposal, rigging the territory with traps, using guerrilla tactics in dense urban terrain, and possibly forming alliances with the Voodoo Boys, the Scavs, and the Animals, or even nomad smugglers to harass Kang Tao operations. Dogtown's crumbling hotels and narrow streets provide perfect terrain for ambushes and asymmetric warfare. These fighters have spent a decade in live fire conditions and possess intimate knowledge of every inch of their territory. Kang Tao security teams, while well-equipped, might prove unprepared for the kind of insurgency Dogtown could unleash. However, Kang Tao's resources dwarf those of any street-level organization. The corporation ranks among the top arms manufacturers worldwide and maintains access to advanced weaponry, combat drones, and platoons of well-armed troops. In a protracted conflict, Kang Tao's superior numbers, funding, and technology would begin to overwhelm Barghest's resistance. The company could potentially hire mercenary outfits to supplement their security, effectively surrounding Dogtown. They might also employ cyber warfare, using their high-tech capabilities to neutralize Barghest's communications and drone systems. The Voodoo Boys would present an additional complication for Kang Tao. As master netrunners controlling Pacifica's local grid, they would fiercely oppose any corporation installing new servers. A Kang Tao data center represents an affront to the Voodoo Boys as much as to Barghest. The Voodoo Boys would likely hack Kang Tao's systems or feed intelligence to Barghest, creating a two-front resistance that could turn the situation into a drawn-out quagmire. Now here's where it could get interesting. Given the NUSA's recent involvement in the area, a Kang Tao-Barghest conflict could extend far beyond Night City's borders, touching on fundamental tensions in the global power structure. Such a confrontation would involve Sino-American tensions, as Kang Tao enjoys backing from the Chinese state, while Barghest's origins tie to the Nusa through Militech. If Kang Tao effectively invaded Dogtown, Nusa hardliners might view it as a Chinese incursion on American soil, despite Night City's official independence. Now, this could spur the Nusa to quietly support Barghest or orchestrate intervention via Militech. Conversely, Kang Tao's bold move might draw Arasaka into the fray, as the Japanese corporation maintains a major Night City presence and would not welcome another megacorp seizing territory, especially the size of Pacifica. Dogtown could become a proxy battleground for corporate and national interests. The precedent such a conflict would establish carries enormous implications. If Kang Tao succeeds in crushing Barghest and pacifying Pacifica, it would demonstrate that the megacorps can annex parts of cities with impunity, potentially triggering a massive shift in Night City's balance of power. The events of 2077 fundamentally altered Dogtown's power structure with Kurt Hansen's death during the presidential crisis. This created a significant power vacuum where two main candidates emerged to assume Barghest leadership, Chester Bennett and Yago Sabo. Chester Bennett, Hansen's brutal enforcer, represents the continuity with the previous regime's hardline military approach. A Bennett-led Barghest might experience even more authoritarian rule, potentially leading to reckless aggression externally. Bennett's profile suggests that he has a soft spot for Arasaka, potentially giving him an ally in Night City's most powerful corporation. Now that's a bit antithetical to Barghest's entire existence, but if a war with Kang Tao is on the horizon, Arasaka may be their only option. Alternatively, Yago, Barghest's chief accountant, represents a more pragmatic approach. Coming from a corporate background, Sabo might adopt political strategies rather than purely military ones. Under his leadership, Barghest could attempt to broker deals or play different corporations against each other to maintain Dogtown's semi-independence. The outcome of this succession struggle directly impacts any potential Kang Tao intervention. A Bennett-led Barghest might hasten confrontation through aggressive posturing, while a Sabo-led organization could attempt negotiation or even profit-sharing arrangements. After the events of Phantom Liberty, the artificial intelligence element adds another layer of complexity. The Blackwall AI unleashed in Dogtown and Morrow Rock during Phantom Liberty's events could have lasting repercussions. If any rogue AI involvement occurred, it might lurk in data streams, potentially influencing events remotely. An AI could begin controlling Barghest's automated defenses, or even feeding them intelligence, effectively becoming an unseen ally. Conversely, an AI might corrupt Kang Tao's systems during an incursion, causing smart weapons to malfunction at critical moments. These developments could elevate the Barghest-Kang Tao conflict from a simple territorial dispute to part of the larger transhuman struggle between rogue AIs and corporate control. The unresolved tension between Kang Tao's Pacifica ambitions and Barghest's territorial controls creates fertile ground for future narrative developments. Several scenarios could unfold in subsequent events. Pacifica might showcase a success story where Kang Tao operates a fortified logistics hub, with Dogtown's ruins bulldozed, or remain an unresolved war zone if fighting erupted and stalemated. An ongoing low-intensity war between Barghest insurgents and Kang Tao security could provide compelling environmental storytelling. Such a scenario would offer moral choices between supporting underdog freedom fighters or the stabilizing corporate force. I think we know who Johnny would pick in this one. Other factions might enter this equation as events unfold. If Barghest appears weakened, then rival and outsider gangs could attempt to encroach on Pacifica under the pretext of preventing a foreign corporate takeover. Should future NUSA leadership adopt more hawkish policies, actual military intervention remains possible, representing a second unification war on a more micro scale. The confrontation between Kang Tao's corporate ambitions and Barghest's territorial control represents far more than a simple conflict over real estate. It embodies the fundamental tension between corporate expansion and local resistance. Kang Tao's interest in Pacifica hangs over Dogtown as a mega-corporate cleanup that Barghest will fight to avert. What seems clear is that Pacifica's fate will reverberate far beyond its borders, making any Barghest versus Kang Tao conflict potentially defining for Night City's future. The groundwork has been laid for a confrontation that could reshape the balance of power and establish new precedents for corporate territorial expansion. As Night City's future unfolds, the question remains whether Kang Tao will devour Dogtown's defenders, or if the entrenched militia will prove that even megacorporate ambitions have limits when faced with determined resistance on familiar ground.